Welcome, everybody, to Financial Issues. Shana, we have a little bit of a technical issue here with our TriCaster, so we're going live right at 9:05. It's good to be here with you this morning. Yep.
It is Rapid Fire Friday, and our phone lines are already open. So if you're watching the live program, which is happening at 8 a.m. Central Time, get your call queued up. The number is 610-363-1110. Yeah. We do have for how many? The first two callers?
Yes, first two callers today, Shana, are going to get a free copy of Dan's book. That's right. Fear of Money.
And workbook.
The workbook, yes. And the workbook. So make sure to
Fear
call
of
in.
Money.
Yeah.
So, folks, we are a partner and listener-supported ministry. We encourage you to find out more about that ministry at financialissues.org and consider becoming a partner today. Whether you are already a partner or not, make sure that you sign our petition. So we are all about biblically responsible investing, and we want to encourage people to screen out companies who are funding the darkness. And we recently had a sell alert this week for a company. You can find out which one it is, whether you're a partner or not, just by going to the website and sign that petition. Encourage them to stop their behavior of promoting the LGBTQ lie by funding gay pride parades and gay festivals and things like that, and just get back to the nature of their business, which is to sell home improvement products and construction materials. So we have that available, I think, at least through the end of today. So make sure that you go and do that. Our stewardship verse today comes from 1 Timothy 5:4. But if any widow has children or grandchildren, let them first learn to show piety at home and to repay their parents, for this is good and acceptable before God. So Paul instructs us that caring for our families, especially aging parents and grandparents, is a way to live out our faith, a way to show that we love the Lord and we love his people, including those in our own household. In many cases, parents have resources that were given to them by God. They have houses, money, pensions, income, Social Security. If this is the case and a parent starts to lose the ability to handle their own affairs, the loving thing to do may be to step in and help them. A child should really avoid any temptation to consider how to preserve their own inheritance when helping to make decisions for their parent when it comes to the resources of the parent. Sometimes there are harder decisions to make if resources of the parent are not enough to cover the cost, but we know that God will be there to help us. He's always there. He's always a very present help especially when our heart is to honor him. Seth, what do you think?
That's great, Shana. I think you're exactly right. And it reminds me, Christians have to be the first to care for their aging parents. The context of this passage, we were just in the Bible study a couple months ago. Paul's making a point to protect the church from needing to carry the undue financial burden of helping widows when the instance is there that the widows can be helped by their family members who are believers first. So it's not that the church doesn't come to the aid of people like this, but rather it's when there are family members, children, adult children who can help their widowed parents, the first responsibility falls on those children. If they are not there, if they refuse or something like that, then the church will step in and help. But this is really a call for adult children to obey that one of the 10 commandments, to honor your father and mother. This is a way to do that with aging parents. You have a tremendous opportunity before you to obey this command. So I'd encourage all of our listeners in this situation, there are many of them, to be able to do this well. And that kind of leads to our topic of the day, Shana, based on one of the questions that we've gotten from our partners. This is a question from Bob. He's 72 years old, and he's asking, years back, my brother and I moved mom's assets into a trust to avoid a 5-year look back if necessary. Also, we put her house into our ownership / hers until she passed. Well, she passed last year at age 93. What guidance or recommendation could you give us for what to do with this house? Taxes will go up this year, I know. My brother's 5 years younger than me. What insight would you have for Bob here, Shana?
Well, I would say to look, first at what are the options before you. What are you leaning toward? Do either of you want the home either to live in or as an income asset, like to have a piece of rental property that you can rent out? If so, does the one who wants it have the resources to buy the other one out, or do you want to become business partners. You would have an ongoing responsibility for paying the taxes, doing the repairs and maintenance on the house. Is this something with which you want to share responsibility with your brother? I mean, you know probably a little bit about his fiscal responsibility. You won't be able to force him to pay the taxes or to pay for repairs or things like that. But if he doesn't, you're either going to have to make the choice to pay for them by yourself, or if you're not paying the taxes, you can face actually losing the home altogether. The taxing jurisdiction won't care that your brother is half owner. All they'll know is that the full bill isn't getting paid if it doesn't. So if one of you has no means to buy it out, either with cash, other inheritance assets, or through financing, does one or the other want to finance it for the other? If so, then you've got to make sure that there's a legal contract regarding the lien against the portion that is being financed. I mean, you don't want to end up in a legal battle with your brother's heirs if something were to happen to him. If you sell it, you will likely have capital gains. So depending on your share of ownership of the home, your cost basis may be a little bit harder to calculate. The portion of the home that still belonged to your mom at death, that part of it was likely considered an inheritance, and you could get a stepped up cost basis on that part. But depending on, how that transfer was done whenever you moved it out of, or at least part of it out of her name and into yours, that could, or very likely was considered a gift at that time. And that gift of the portion of ownership of the house also came with the parents' original cost basis. So you will probably need a tax professional to help you calculate an accurate cost basis. Once you've kind of explored all of those decisions, I would imagine that the question is going to be really narrowed down to only maybe one or a couple of options.
Yeah, it's really good, Shana. That's helpful there. And as we're thinking through this, what about some of the other rules and regulations for a house that's been inherited upon the death of the previous owner? What else do we need to know?
Well, I think that cost basis question is a big question, and I think for most people they intend just to help, and they think that it's going to make the passage easier by having their names on it. But you also have to consider whether or not you're exceeding any gift tax limitations or rules. You might be creating an unintended gift tax when you just add someone onto your deed or get added onto someone's deed. By law, any gift exceeding a certain amount, which is $18,000 in 2024 per recipient per year, must be reported to the IRS and could potentially trigger a gift tax liability. So adding a relative to your deed could be considered a gift, and this could result in higher taxes that you would need to pay. A better option may just be to put some kind of TOD designation, which stands for transfer on death, and that could help preserve, or it could prevent preserving the cost basis and actually give you a better cost basis when the property truly passes to you.
Yeah, it's helpful stuff. You just mentioned this, Shana, but any other capital gains tax limitations, other tax things we should consider if something like this happens?
Yeah, the step up in cost basis is really a great thing right now, because when you truly inherit, when you didn't own it before and you come into ownership because of the passing of a parent or a relative, then you get, and it's not just you don't have to be related, but you get a step up in cost basis to whatever the market value is on the day that they passed. So if they've owned the house for a really long time and their cost basis is low, that helps you to avoid a potential capital gains situation.
Yeah, awesome. And I think this might be the last question we have time for in this segment, but what about some pitfalls to look out when we're attempting to transfer assets to the next generation?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, you have sort of a loss of control of those assets. I mean, if you share ownership with someone, you may trust your kids, and your kids may be trustworthy, and all of that would never do anything to against your wishes, but you legally lose partial control over the assets. You're also could be subject to the credit issues of the person that you're sharing ownership with. So, if your kids or liability, what if the person that you added is texting and driving, gets in a wreck, and kills the breadwinner of a family, and they only carry the minimum liability protection on their auto policy? Or worse, accidentally let their coverage lapse, then, their liability could become, a real burden to you, because you typically can't lose a primary home from legal judgments or to creditors, but other property could be subject to being taken. Well, folks, we got to take a break. It is Rapid Fire Friday. Our phone lines are open, 610-363-1110. We'll be back and finish up our thoughts on this in just a minute.
We are indeed facing into the wind of this cultural holocaust to try to provide loving, compassionate, Christ-centered answers to these women. The greatest thing they need is the ability to make sound judgment decisions in their life, and that comes from the Lord Jesus Christ, a heart change that only He can bring. So we're evangelists to these women on behalf of the Financial Issues audience, and helping them to be able to move forward with wisdom in their lives when they come in, not just to save the life of their baby, but also to save the soul of the mom and the baby eventually as well. It's one thing to talk about it, but it's certainly another thing, and so encouraging to see the pro-life ministry, a financial issue stewardship ministry, take a stand on this thing and do something so effective as we've done.
Yes, sir.
Go to financialissues.org/preborn to learn more about preborn.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Welcome back to Financial Issues, everyone. Hey, Shana, this is a really helpful conversation, and I appreciate your wisdom with this, especially as a young person. This isn't something I'm thinking about all the time, but it's a good thing to be thinking for sure, especially when I'm in that position of transferring assets to the next generation, kind of that other side of it. Just to pick up on this here, can you speak to any moral or ethical or maybe even spiritual issues that a Christian should consider when embarking on this concept of generational planning?
Yeah, and I think this really kind of specifically applies to the Medicaid planning that we hear going on a lot. I think that when parents age and people get into that situation where they're looking at how are we going to pay for the cost of this, the cost of care is really high these days. Yeah. And so, I think that the worldly wisdom would say, well, you really want to try to protect all your parents' assets from being used up to pay for their care. But, to me, that the spirit behind that is sort of greed. We don't want to be like the prodigal. When in the story of the prodigal, remember, he asked for his inheritance while the parent was still alive so that he could benefit from it. And, not to say that we're going to go off and act like the prodigal did, but, it's kind of that spirit. God provides a person with what they need. And when God provides assets to a person, the likely purpose is to provide for their care, for the care of that person during their life. And if anything is left, an inheritance is passed. And Scripture calls the passing of an inheritance good too, but we should never get those priorities out of order. We should never put the priority of passing on an inheritance ahead of actually using the assets that were given to a person for their benefit, especially when it's our parents. So, the other question is if we do some things to rearrange ownership or to try to get things out of a parent's name, the purpose behind that is so that they can qualify for public assistance. So, basically, we're saying we're going to take all of our parents' stuff over here because we want to preserve it for us, and we're going to put the burden of paying for our parents' care onto the taxpayers. And I think that there's, some real, moral and ethical implications there. Should we really be shifting the burden of caring, especially in light of the scripture that we heard earlier, when that's our responsibility before the Lord? Should we really be trying to pass that off on other taxpayers? And if we do that when they could have paid for their own care themselves, does that rob someone else who may genuinely need those benefits, rather than having them allocated to someone who could have paid for it themselves? It goes on to say in 1 Timothy 5:8 that anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. So, this reinforces the duty to care for our family members and, not to neglect that responsibility. The other thing that you have to think of if you're Medicaid planning is that the quality of care may be greatly diminished if someone has to use Medicaid, because, when you qualify for Medicaid by not having pretty much anything, except your house and a little bit of assets, then you very likely lose the choice altogether of having care provided in your home, being able to stay home. You probably would have to go receive care in a facility, and it's not going to be the facility that you may have chosen. You're going to have to choose from facilities that will accept Medicaid. So, I think all of those things are really good things to think about.
Yeah, Shana, I love what you said there. It reminds me, there's such an emphasis I think we put on in retirement, and even in the good emphasis of saving for when we go home to be with the Lord. But I know some people who are actually chained to that idea almost to an unhealthy degree, where they're putting all their efforts into that period of life and neglecting the needs right in front of them. And so it's just a good reminder to always use wisdom to meet whatever needs we need to, even those that are right in front of us. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I think it is. I'm having a hard time hearing with what's in my ear, but I picked up on some of what you said. I think it was really good.
That's good. I'll need to lean into the microphone a little bit today. Folks, if I'm too loud, let me know, but that's how we're going today.
Darn these technical difficulties.
That's right. I know.
All right. Well, it is Rapid Fire Friday, folks, and we do have someone in the call queue. So let's get to that right now. We've got Nicole calling from Louisiana. Hi, Nicole. You're live on Financial Issues, and hopefully I can hear you.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I think this kind of tags off the other question that was before about a cost basis. I'm an only child, and my mom and dad have two properties. One is their primary residence, and one is a rental property. Neither one of them have a mortgage on them. So I didn't know. I will inherit these properties when both of my parents pass, so transfer on death. But explain cost basis. That terminology confuses me.
Yeah. So whenever you sell a capital asset that's not that is not privileged to some kind of special tax treatment, like if you own stocks in an IRA or a Roth IRA, that's a different thing. But if you just own assets outright, like homes, like rental property, like stocks and just regular accounts, then you have what's called a cost basis. it's a little bit more complicated than this, but it's basically whatever you paid for it, plus any improvements that you've made to it. So it's most straightforward with stocks. You really basically just look at what you paid for it. Then when you sell it, depending on how long you've owned it, the taxes are different. You have to pay taxes on the gains. But if it's a short-term gain, meaning that you've owned it for less than a year, the gain part, not the whole thing, but the gain part is taxed at your ordinary income tax rate. If you actually have a loss on it, you're able to offset your income by $3,000 and then carry that loss forward if there's more than that for like 5 years. If you've owned the property for longer than a year, then you're subject to the capital gains, long-term capital gains rates, which are tied to whatever tax bracket you're in. If you're in the 12% tax bracket, then your capital gains rate is actually 0. For most people, they're going to pay a 15% capital gains tax on the gain part. Unless you're in a really high tax bracket, then you're going to pay a 20% capital gain and probably another 3% or so in net investment tax. So anytime that you make money on the sale of capital assets, property, this includes crypto as well. So there's a lot of things that fall into that. It includes gold for most purposes, metals, all of those things. So you have to file that on your taxes and pay tax on it. Now, when you inherit those kinds of assets, you get what's called a step up in cost basis. And so the cost basis then becomes whatever the value, in your case, whatever the value of those properties are on the day that they pass, the day that that the owners pass and the ownership goes to you. So then if you sell them immediately, you essentially have no capital gains tax on them. So I think this is really a really important topic to be talking about now, because one of the things that's happening in the presidential campaigns, especially on the Harris side, is that she wants to increase the capital gains rate to potentially 44%.
And Shana, I had also heard that she was considering taxing unrealized gains as well, too. Is that true? That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's
crazy. That's a whole nother
bonkers
conversation, and that's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So, Nicole, did we answer your question, or do you have a follow up?
Well, I think it's going to be an individualized answer now that I'm hearing more information. And I think I need to have an estate planner or tax estate planner.
Maybe so. I mean, I would just the best person to ask probably would be either your tax person or your parents' tax person. But as long as there's not any extenuating circumstances, it's likely that when those properties pass to you, the cost basis will become whatever their market value is on the day that you inherit them.
And I plan to keep them both as rental properties. I'm 58, and I figured, if I have 2 rental properties, that's passive income that will help me in retirement.
Yep. Amen. I like rental properties. They are good sources of income as long as you're, and I've said this before, but we actually, me and my husband, we actually do own rental properties as part of our investments. But he is a contractor, and he deals with the tenants. So if it were just up to me, I would not want to deal with tenants, and I would not want to deal with repairs. So I would look for other sources of income. But if you're in that camp and you can do that, then they do provide some great opportunities.
Yes, I already have 1 rental property, and I have a property management over that property, and so far, so good.
Yeah.
Great work, Nicole. Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks for calling today. You're going to get a copy of Fear of Money.
Oh, that's a blessing. Thank you so much.
Hey, and for you, Nicole, why don't you hang on the line there, and Darlene can get your information so we can get that book sent to you, all right?
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Y'all have a great weekend.
Thanks, Nicole.
I don't think we have time really. We do have some other calls coming in, so that's great. We are going to have a true rapid fire Friday today, it looks like. But we're going to have to hold them for the next segment because we want to give them time to get their questions answered. Well, folks, I hope that you joined Seth this morning for Bible study. Seth, you want to tell everybody where you're going to be next week
Yeah,
and
I'd love
how to get in
Shana.
on that?
Absolutely. Go to the resources tab, folks, financialissues.org, resources tab. A couple rows down is join our Bible study. It has a phone number, access code. We'll be in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 17 through 19 next week. Just further continuing some of the warnings against this concept of using worldly chatter and speaking kind of flippantly with our tongues and asking the right questions. So it's going to be a good time next week, Shana. I hope you all will join us.
Sounds good.
Yep.
And did you say how to do it? Go to financialissues.org.
Yeah, financialissues.org.
Resources.
It's real easy, and it's not. You don't have to be a partner to join. Just go to financialissues.org, resources tab. I think it's 4 spots down. You click join our Bible study, and it's right there. So that phone number, access code is there for the public.
It's early, but it's worth it. And it's a very non-threatening way to get in on a Bible study. And Seth does a really great job teaching, scripture by scripture. So
thank you, Shana.
Make sure you tune in for that. Well, folks, if you are listening to the short version of the show, we would encourage you to get the full version by downloading our phone app. Then you can listen to all the episodes, the full episodes, whenever it's convenient for you. For the rest of you, stay tuned. We'll be back with more Rapid Fire Friday. Through the ministry of Preborn, the Financial Issues family has saved tens of thousands of lives of babies. What an amazing job that God has done through you, the Financial Issues family. Would you join us in saving the lives of babies? What an amazing reunion we will have in glory, meeting all the people that we have saved. Please go to preborn.org, that is preborn.org, or financialissues.org, and click on the Preborn banner.
Here at FISM News, our mission is to provide you with news from a source you can trust.
The news is a constant reminder that this world is not our home. It is marred by sin, resulting in wars, brokenness, and divisiveness.
Jesus promised that he will return soon to judge sin and make all things new.
Until then, we place our hope in him.
This is the good news, the most important truth we feel compelled to share.
Today, it's easy to get caught up in the rush and forget about what really matters. But when it comes to your money, are you making decisions that truly reflect your values? Too often, we invest in stocks without knowing what they stand for. What if your money could speak for what you believe in? Imagine following an investment strategy that recommends companies that don't support the things that break the heart of the Lord. A steadfast strategy, never wavering from biblical truth. When your investments align with your values, your money speaks for you. Let your money do the talking. Invest in what matters to you. Because biblical values matter, even when investing. Visit financialissues.org to learn more. That's financialissues.org.
I'm John.
I'm Debbie, and we're Samaritan members.
We have 8 children, ages from 30 down to 15, and we have a ministry called Family Man Ministries.
When he left the pastorate to start the ministry, we had no income for about a year potentially, and so we were living on almost nothing. The cost of health care seemed impossible because we had a big family. And so when I started researching ministries, there was no comparison. It was just the best deal. And so a year after we joined, my 10-year-old daughter at the time got pneumonia, and it was scary. Someone sent a card just to Maggie, and it said, not just that we're praying for you, but that God will always take care of you, and here's $5 for you to go out and get ice cream. It was just really special.
To make that connection, that's an amazing thing. I was sold on Samaritan Ministries. I just thought, okay, I'm a part of this.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Well, it is a true rapid fire Friday today. We've got some calls in the queue, so we're going to jump right back over to that. We've got Gina calling from South Carolina. Hi, Gina. You're live on Financial Issues.
Good morning, Shana.
Good morning.
Hope y'all are well. My question for you today is concerning the recent sale list. I looked at it on Tuesday, and there was one for a bond fund that I have listed there as a sale. I think it's an inflation-protected bond fund, and I'm down in that currently. And I was just wondering, should I wait just a little bit for it to come back up? Or should I just go ahead and sell it, get rid of it? And if so, what might I replace it? It's not a lot of money. It's only a few $1,000s. I've had it for a while. So just want your opinion on it.
So I would check the yield on it. My suspicion is that the yield is probably a lot less than it was whenever you bought it. And there are other things in fixed income that are going to improve the yield there. So, the way that bond funds work is that when interest rates are on the rise, bond prices go down. So that explains why you're down in it. We had a period, you must have purchased it prior to the Fed raising rates to the level that we're at right now. Once the Fed does start to lower rates, there's a possibility, a probability that the price of the shares will go back up. But I just think that there's better opportunities.
Okay. Like I say, it's not a lot, and I did buy it before the Fed raised the interest rates, so that's why I've had it for a little while. I'm down about 1.5% in it. So,
oh yeah, yeah. I certainly that's very negligible. So I certainly wouldn't let that hold you up at all. And like I said, if you check the yield on that, compare it to the yield in some of the other fixed income things, even CDs are still 4.5%, 5% in some cases. So I think you could much improve your yield there.
Okay, thank you very much. You have a blessed day.
Thanks, Gina.
Thanks, Gina. God bless you.
All right. Let's go on to William. William's calling from Mississippi. Hi, William. You're live on Financial Issues.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. My question is about the cost basis of inherited stock, which you've been talking about this morning. Is it strictly on the stepped-up basis on the date of the last one's death?
Yeah, so the cost basis when it steps up is typically steps up to the market value on the date of death of the person that you inherited it from.
Well, and the reason I asked that is because it took me a good while to get it transferred over because it took me over 2 years to get it transferred over.
Oh, wow.
And my mother died 4 years ago, and 3 of the 8 shares that my father had bought, because of the companies that held they didn't give the cost basis on 3 of the 8 stocks. So I got them in my account in Fidelity, but 3 of them don't have cost basis. And I hadn't been really worried about it, but one of the stocks is CD38. I got 258 shares of it, and the cost basis was like $98 when my mother died. So It's kind of crucial. And those stocks were on drip, some of it, but that wouldn't affect, after she died, it wouldn't affect the cost basis, would it?
No. So what you're going to want to do, and probably work with your tax professional, is just go back to, and it'll be the date that you inherited them. If the second to pass sounds like your mother, so go back and look at the stock price and the number of shares that you had on that date, and that's going to get you close to the cost basis that you'll have. And then also, if it's been 2 years and I couldn't get to my CD 38, that's the one that we just said to sell, right?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's
the home improvement company.
Right. Yeah, I got it now. So they do pay a little bit of a dividend. So if you've been reinvesting those dividends over the last 2 years, then that might change your cost basis a little bit too. But there's ways that if you don't know exactly what your cost basis is, the IRS has provisions that or guidelines for you to estimate it. But I would imagine that it wouldn't be very difficult to get a cost basis on that.
Well, I'm finding it very difficult because nobody wants to tell me what the number is.
Well, it doesn't really matter what your parents' cost basis was. The cost basis for you is the share price on the day that you inherited it.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm just going to go to that. I think I can look it up online pretty quick, and I think whatever it closed at that day, I'm going to tell Fidelity that's the cost basis.
Yeah. Yep. That sounds like a good strategy.
Thank you, Shana. Thank you, Seth.
Thanks, William.
Thanks, William.
God bless, brother.
And I'll just add too, Fidelity may or may not take it. They may have you sign something saying that's the cost basis for them to put it in their system, but that's not really what matters. What matters is how you prove it to the IRS when you have a sale, because the brokerage firm is just going to provide the information about the sale. It's up to you to document the cost basis on your tax return.
Helpful stuff there, Shana. Thank you. Okay. We've got a couple things coming in on social if you want to tackle these before the ag.
Okay.
That's one of them. Let's see here. Nathan is asking, does the price of gold have any connection with the stock price of some of the material companies that do gold and silver and mining?
Yes, it does. So, it's not going to be a pure gold play, but, obviously if the price of a commodity goes up, then that increases the odds of profitability for the company that's mining for them. So good, great.
Yeah.
Rapid fire Friday question.
That's awesome. And then Daniel is asking here, Shana, are there ways to defer taxes on unearned income other than savings bonds and annuities? Any other ways we can think of?
Well, an annuity by the tax code allows you to defer earnings, but my question really is, why would you want to? I guess unless you're in a super high tax bracket right now, but I'm in the camp, I believe taxes are going to be higher in the future than what they are today. So you pay taxes today at the current, most likely lower rate, or you pay them in the future at some rate that you don't know what it's going to be, and you don't know what your income is going to be in the future either. Plus, you are also sort of kicking the can down the road. If you have tax deferral on that, you're going to pay taxes on a bigger number down the road if it grows than you would today.
Yeah.
All right. Well, lively show today. We've got the Ag Report. We've got Craig Haugaard coming up with the Ag Report. After Craig, we're going to take a short break, but we will be back with more financial issues.
This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for August 23rd. Well, poor weekly export sales numbers and good yield numbers coming out of the Pro Farmer Crop Tour gave corn a reason to drift lower during yesterday's trade. At the closing bell, December corn was 4 3/4 cents lower at $3.93.5. Big pod counts from the Pro Farmer Crop Tour and small U.S. export sales pushed the soybean complex into negative territory during yesterday's session. November beans ended the day 20 cents lower at $9.61.5 per bushel. Wheat was a tug-of-war between the cheap Russian cash market versus a EU wheat crop that seems to be getting smaller. Russia's FOB values dropped by $2 to $3 per metric ton yesterday, and as a result, the U.S. hard red winter wheat market is now back to a $30 per metric ton premium to Russian FOB values. The result was an ugly day in the wheat markets as all three classes made new life of contract lows. Minneapolis December wheat was down 13 cents at $5.84. Kansas City dropped by 6 3/4 to close at $5.45, and Chicago was 8.5 cents lower at $5.35.5 per bushel. Cotton futures started the day stronger but ran into selling pressure and ended the day in the red. When the closing bell rang, December futures were 101 points lower at 69.34. Livestock futures had a pretty good outing. October live cattle were $1.27.5 higher to $175.90 per hundredweight. October feeder cattle rose by $2.57.5, settling at $234.25 per hundred. And our October lean hog futures were $3.47.5 stronger, closing at $79.62.5 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures tried to take out Wednesday's new contract high, and when they failed to do that, we saw a sharp sell-off. At the closing bell, September futures were down 63 points, settling at $21.98. Well, this has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
In a world where financial decisions can feel overwhelming, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. But what if there is a way to align your financial goals with your deepest values? Financial Issues has helped us navigate the complex world of finance through a biblical lens. By prioritizing and investing in a way that honors God, Financial Issues has empowered us to focus on what truly matters: our family, our faith, and our future. With Financial Issues by our side, we can invest knowing that our financial decisions are in line with our values. Take the first step today and become a Financial Issues partner to access rich online resources, training tools, and guidance for biblically responsible investing. Head over to financialissues.org and learn how to invest your money in a way that honors God. That's financialissues.org.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common: the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Well, at Financial Issues, we help you to stay in the know about the financial issues of the day. We help keep you abreast of what's happening in the economy and the markets, and help you understand how that impacts your own personal financial issues. So today is ending the week of August the 23rd, 2024, and I've got a few takeaways. Well, the markets have been in positive territory so far. It's looking like they will close in positive territory, assuming that the trends hold today by just a little. So the kind of solidifying sort of a V-bottom recovery for the very, very short pullback that we saw. The biggest news to me this week, which was sort of yawned at by everyone else, was the benchmark revisions to the non-farm payrolls number. So just like that, 818,000 jobs that the Biden administration ran victory laps around, saying that they created over the last year, ending March of 2024, were just revised away. So the expectation was that number would fall somewhere between a very wide range of 350,000 to 1 million, and we won't even get the final revision for this number until February of 2025, and I think it could be much worse. Yeah. So what we're looking at, every first week of the month, we get the non-farm payrolls number, and that number is calculated by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is a government organization, and they do a survey. They do surveys of businesses and households to see how many jobs were created. They also have some things in the calculation where they have to estimate how many small businesses are being created, how many are filing bankruptcy. That's called the birth-death model. A lot of criticism in and around that piece of the calculation. But, you have to look back to 2009 to find a worse revision than what we just saw. And I don't know if you remember. I remember what was happening in 2009. It was the Great Recession, the financial crisis. So instead of creating 250,000 jobs on average per month, we were actually only creating around 185,000, assuming that number doesn't get revised even more. Now, there's some talk about how counting immigrants has factored into this big revision. I will say that, most of the economists, I kept looking for a big reaction in the market. I kept looking for, economists to really say something about this, and nobody really did. They just the markets kind of took it as, well, I guess this is more justification for the Fed to go on and start cutting rates sooner rather than later. Now, President Trump did have a very extreme take on this, and he gave his opinion via Truth Social about why the revision was so high. What he said was, and it's small on my end, Seth, could you read it for me?
Yeah, I'd be glad to hear, Shana. Guys, can we get that on full screen for just a second here? Here's what Trump said here, Shana. It was the following: massive scandal. Here, let me get my proverbial reading glasses on, as it were. The Biden-Harris administration has been caught fraudulently manipulating job statistics to hide the true extent of the economic ruin they've inflicted upon America. New data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows the administration padded the numbers with an extra 818,000 jobs that do not exist and never did. The real numbers are much worse than that. If Comrade Kamala gets another 4 years, millions more jobs will vanish overnight. Inflation will completely destroy our country. Your life savings will be wiped out. With a Trump victory, we will once again have the greatest economy in history. MAGA 2024! Exclamation point.
Yeah, there's pieces of that I agree with, but I think his statement in general was very hyperbolic,
right,
and sort of questionable. The truth of the matter is that the jobs market is not as strong as we have been hearing that it was for the last year, and if this, whatever has caused this big miscalculation up through March continues, which I suspect that it will, can you imagine where we are now?
Yeah.
So, there's a lot to say about that. I think it was a much bigger deal than anybody really, except President Trump, made it out to be. But I think that from April through July, that same method of calculation has been used, and I think that we could be under the assumption that the job market is very much stronger than it was. How I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that Jackson Hole meeting with the FOMC whenever they got that piece of data this week. The FOMC minute meetings came meeting minutes came out this week too. It's sort of old news. It didn't really reveal anything new except that the Fed is still widely expected to cut in September. My prediction is that the August jobs report will confirm that the labor market is very quickly deteriorating, and they will cut 50. Though I don't think though I think that I am still in the minority in that view. I think the majority is still expecting only 25. But man, like I said, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in Jackson Hole when that 12-month revision number was released.
Yeah.
Actually, I would have liked to seen the Fed cut 25 in July, and there were apparently several quote-unquote FOMC members who thought the same. Here's what the meeting minutes said about those several members. All participants supported the maintaining of the target range for the Fed funds at 5.25% to 5.5%, although several observed that recent progress on inflation and increases in the unemployment rate had provided a plausible case for reducing the target range 25 basis points at this meeting, or that they could have supported such a decision. So, We'll see what happens there. Weekly unemployment came out. Initial claims came in at 232,000 for the week as forecasted, while last week was revised up by 1,000 to 228. The 4-week moving average ticked down 1,000 to 236 from 237 last week. Continuing claims were in line with expectations and rose 4,000 week over week to 1.863 and continues to hover around the highest reading since November of 2021. Continuing claims continued the upward ticking trend that has emerged over the last 3 months and is indicating a step up in the pace of firings. It's still only a slow progression right now, but progression indeed it is in the wrong direction, just like the politics of progressivism. The BLS Establishment Survey revisions, as seen yesterday, prove that hirings are indeed slowing since almost 1 million jobs have disappeared, never existed. So what's coming next week? NVIDIA earnings. What is a single company's earnings so important to the market? Well, it's because of its size and stellar performance since May of 2023. The chip company has accounted for nearly 30% of the S&P 500's total return for the first 6 months of this year, even though it's only one of the 500 companies in the index. So NVIDIA is 0.2% of the S&P if you're taking the equal weighted view, but since the S&P is not equally weighted, and it has had NVIDIA has had much influence on the upside of the quote-unquote market. It has potential to be a big drag on the markets if it disappoints. Just earlier this month, NVIDIA's slide helped drag the S&P down nearly 10% from its all-time high set just a month ago. On some days, the S&P falls even though the majority of stocks across Wall Street are rising because of the size of NVIDIA. So, NVIDIA's earnings release definitely has the potential to be a market mover, either positively or negatively. We will also get readings for PCE next week. The PCE is the Fed's inflation number. That is their preferred method of gauging inflation, and we'll get that read out next week. We will also get numbers for personal income and spending for the month of July. So now that you're in the know about the recent and upcoming financial issues, we hope that you will learn more about our ministry and how we can help you integrate those issues into your stewardship. What should you do about the news and the economy and the markets? How should you handle your portfolio? That's a question we help you answer in a very simple way. So find out more about how we can help you defund darkness with our biblically responsible investment strategy. Well, folks, we've come to the end of the program today. We hope that you have a wonderful day of worship on Sunday, that you gather together with the saints, and that you are encouraged. Lord willing, we will be back next week to remind you that time is getting short. The Master's coming back, and we want to help you be found a good and faithful steward with everything you've been trusted to manage. Because the fact of the matter is, God still owns it all. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week at Financial Issues.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.